Where do I even start? Hello, Ich Bin Siv, and I will be weighing in on the fees must fall discussion. Wow, that makes it sound like it's some sort of boxing match. In this corner, we have weighing in at a $350 billion GDP, South Africa and its government. Boom! In this corner, we have weighing in at millions of dollars of student debt, the South African fees must fall activists. Boom! Because in this country, we all hate each other. Lastly, we have the rest of South Africa, where they usually are sitting on the fence. For those of you who are lost, I will be speaking about the Fees Must Fall movement, which is, as far as I know, only within South Africa's borders. However, I have seen that video on Facebook of people protesting in solidarity in London, England, which is somewhat ironic. Before anything though, I would like to provide some context via a quick, satirical, yet incredibly educational and accurate history lesson. Once upon a time, there lived a happy continent filled with love, light, agriculture, and loincloths. Plus the first university ever, but we won't get into that right now. The continent today is known as Africa. Never mind. At the southernmost tip of this continent, they lived very, very, very happy people. They farmed subsistently. They spoke in languages that went from one click to another in an expressive form of carefree euphoria. And on top of that, they cared very little about binaries and enjoyed living on their land, which they knew and loved very well. Until one treacherous day, when some random people on big floating leaves with more leaves arrived at the southernmost tip of the continent currently known as Africa. They wore weird, colorful cloths, they spoke strangely, and their skin was the color of wheat. African people were scared as f***. Fast forward 3 centuries and the love, light, agriculture and loincloths were no more. Basically, these wheat-colored fish people stole everything and forced the Africans to do everything their wheat-colored fish way. Also, they brought this government thing and democracy, and Africans weren't allowed to be a part of this democracy, and religion, and a book with a whole lot of rules in it, a manger and a garden. Also, Africans couldn't vote, and it wasn't their place anymore. The gold, the diamonds weren't theirs anymore either. Anyways, things weren't good. One of the massive things that I would like to highlight, which is actually relevant to this video, is the introduction of Bantu education. The apartheid government basically felt that black people weren't actually people, and that, what's the point of teaching a monkey how to read and write? So they developed a certain type of education that even savage, animalistic, dense Africans could understand. Now, in 1994, things changed. Not a lot of things, but people weren't legally required to be racist anymore. If you want more details on the other changes, Google it. A massive change was the Constitution. And in that Constitution, the government, which freed black people from the tyranny of colonial rule / Afrikaner racist rule, promised that South Africans would have free tertiary education. Today, 22 years later, the students of South Africa are looking towards the government, which is still in power, asking, are you going to fulfill your promises or not? To fully unpack the complexities of the Fees Must Fall movement, I would have to write a thesis and then link it in the description. Fees Must Fall is a historical, political, revolutionary, socio-economic phenomenon with intricacies that confuse people with doctorates in history, politics, sociology, and economics. I would love to break it down for you, but I'm just a first year with little to zero experience in the topic at hand. I mean, yeah, I've been to a couple of protests and I guess I did get tear gassed that one time for the same cause, but that doesn't make me an expert in the experiences of Fees Must Fall. However, I can certainly give my own opinion as to why free education for all is a necessity in the South African context, even though I personally can afford tertiary education. Here's 1,652 reasons why fees must fall, why tertiary education must be free for all in South Africa, and why those that believe otherwise are wrong. This country, like every other country in the world, relies on graduates to come into the working world and ensure that capitalism stays slaying. If these fees remain, only privileged white people will be able to ensure the economy stays running. And we don't need that to happen. Again, number 2, tertiary education is a right. Yes, a right. Because without it, people of color wouldn't get hired. You know how a white person without experience has potential, whereas a person of color without experience is, well, inexperienced. Number 3, Black Lives Matter. 2. Number 4, no one can afford these damn fees. They're unreasonable. How am I, a domestic worker, supposed to afford these tertiary education fees and send my child to university so that they can fight for a better future for my family when the fees require 20 of my month's payments? What are we supposed to do? Not eat for 20 months? A year? Also, don't talk to me about student loans when graduates' children inherit their dead parents' student debt when their parents die. Also, bursaries are awarded by merit when my child gets 60% at a school without walls and your child goes to a school with computer labs and books and they get 70%. Also, you need me to graduate so that your beautiful capitalism can stay flourishing. Remember, number 5, free education is possible. To learn more about how it is possible and what the math is, I have a link in the description that you are more than welcome to read from a group of UCT finance students who have done the liberty of doing the maths for you. Number 6, why go to university if I can't afford it, you ask? Refer to points number 1 and 2, please. Number 7, the motto is #fees must fall, not #fees must fall for blacks only, or #fees mustn't fall for white people, or #fees must fall for me, or #fees must fall, but it is simply #fees must fall. Black people in the vast majority are the ones who the fees need to fall for. And if you want to know why it is that these structural inequalities exist, please refer to the history lesson I gave you earlier, or again, you can check the links down below. Just please don't put words into people's mouths. It makes you look silly. The rest of the 1,652 reasons as to why free education for all is a necessity in the South African context can be found in numerous articles written by black academics from South Africa. Now, I'm sure most of you are wondering, Siv, what do you think of the violence used by protesters in the Fees Must Fall protests? these protests weren't always violent. FYI, they started with sit-ins, stayaways, writing letters, silent protest, picketing, marching, wanking, and ding dong, none of it worked. But violence isn't the answer, you say. Let us suppose the Allies did not fight against the Nazis and rather drafted a beautiful petition entitled, "Please don't gas the Jews, please." Would Hitler have been like, "Oh, ja, Entschuldigung, Hannes, turn the gas chambers off, please"? I really don't think so. And let us suppose that we could all, together as a humanity, write a beautiful letter to God asking them to stop the tyranny that is 2016, the year of realizing things. Firstly, I don't think there is a postnet in heaven, and even if there was, it would take up to 2 million working days for them to send the damn letter. My point is, if you don't like the violence and if you personally feel that peace is the answer, I suggest that you step back from the Facebook post that you are writing. You grab a pen and some paper and you write a letter to the government personally asking for free education for all. And I wish you the best in changing the world, Martin Luther King Jr., and I hope that you do not get assassinated.